They shoot the shit. They shoot the shit. Shoot, shit, shit. Shooting the shit with Chippa.
This is part two of the podcast of Shooting the Shit with Chippa that I recorded with Leonidas701, whose real name is Elijah. This is now episode 7 of Shooting the Shit with Chippa. If you missed the first half, please go back and check it out, episode 6, because we're just going to go right into the middle of the conversation I was having with Elijah. Hope you enjoy. Thanks.
Another thing that
keep going. I like ooze. Let's do it.
Might be different. So I was grounded constantly as a kid. Like, constantly. I was an awful person when I was a child. And because of that, I wasn't allowed near screens for most of my adolescence. Most of my childhood, I mean. So I would read all the time. Before I get too much into this, let me say, Lord of the Rings, trying to read Fellowship of the Rings is what killed my love of reading.
That's a hard read. I actually...
this is in high school. I hated it. I tried reading it for fun. I could not get through it.
I did book on tape for the Lord of the Rings. I've read The Hobbit, and I've read The Return of the King, the book. I did the book on tape for Fellowship and the Two Towers because I did the same thing. I tried to read Fellowship, and it's a great book, but it's so hard to read.
Like all the things I had you read in English class, it's something that's very fun to have read and to discuss, but it's pain to read.
Yes. It's all world building and it's exhaustive. And that's why I was so happy when I finally saw that movie where I went, oh my God, they did it. Yeah. They made that palatable. Thank God.
Right. So the thing I was going to bring up is, most of my teachers when I was a kid were women, and the books they would have were sort of more skewed towards girls my age. And so that's how I ended up reading almost the entire Babysitter's Club. That's how I ended up reading.
Nice. Those are actually really good.
A lot of these very girly books, and I think that's kind of shaped a lot of my tastes growing up because now my favorite genre. Whenever I find an RPG or whatever, literally one of the first things I look for is is there a romance option in this game? Is there a romance in this? Which is either due to the things I read growing up, or it's due to my crushing loneliness.
Oh.
Honestly, either or is possible.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah. Look, like I said, I may be a millennial, or I'm either a millennial or Gen Z. Either way, a lot of my humor is crushing.
Oh, I mean, I'm fine with that. I just feel bad.
Oh yeah, trust me, I know.
I was a very, very lonely person for a long, long time. I get it. College in particular was very lonely.
Yeah, there was one joke I wrote. It's you know how there's the thing in Harry Potter, the boggart or whatever it's called, that turns your worst fear. I wrote a joke for that once where it said you can't look at that; it's going to turn your worst fear. It's and the response was, it's going to turn into the fear that my lack of experience as a child is going to lead to me driving people away when I'm older and actually trying to have social experiences with them for the first time, and I'm making all the mistakes that people were supposed to have made when they were younger, but I don't know how to avoid them now.
Oh God!
I'm going to make a physical representation of that.
It's just going to be you staring yourself or back and slap you in the face or punch you in the face.
Well, no, because I actually do like the way I look.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
I have issues with it, and despite the best efforts of my parents and grandparents, I do actually like the way I'm pretty lucky. I'm able to acknowledge that I would like to look better without getting super down about how I look.
That's awesome. That's actually that's a healthy thing. That's good.
One of the jokes I used to make is that I have ADHD and also minor depression. But because the ADHD, my depression can't really get to any of the self-harm or the lingering parts of it. It's basically just constantly, I am so bored. It's a permanent feeling of I want to do something, but there's nothing I want to do.
I know that. I know that very well.
It sucks.
It does. It does. You're talking to a fellow person with that diagnosis, whatever that is.
I think it's called ennui, and the French will not shut up about it.
Oh yes, ennui or whatever the
ennui,
I don't know.
Ennui.
So not to direct you off of where the direction you were going.
No worries, it's your show.
I know, but I'm enjoying it, so I just want to make sure you get to talk about what you want to talk about.
Right. What were the other points I wanted to bring up?
I don't know, but I think you were on your way to one when you got into being moderately depressed.
Right. Yeah, and it's basically just a lot of things about, like I said, I was really shitty as a child, and then when I realized I wanted to be less, Basically, what rating is your podcast?
Anyone, it's fine. You can be vulgar.
Okay, so one of the things that I realized, and this is something my dad helped me realize about myself, is so when I was a kid, I realized I really liked watching. I really liked. How do I put this in a way that doesn't make me sound like a terrible person before I get to the end of it?
I'm not sure because I don't know what you're going to say.
Uh,
But again,
I
I welcome
realized
all, dude.
I realized that I liked. I liked getting people's attention, and B, like the way I describe myself is I'm an extrovert who's really bad at it. I liked getting people's attention, and I liked inflicting emotionality onto people, but I specifically liked inflicting hurt onto people. But I didn't
Okay.
like seeing people. I didn't like seeing people be hurt, if that makes sense. And that took me a long time to grapple with. And eventually, a couple of things that my dad told me kind of all clicked in my head. What my dad told me
Okay.
is that I was very empathetic, but that I was afraid of that because I didn't know how to handle those feelings.
Oh.
And another thing that kind of helped me realize it is it's a very long and confusing story as to why it's so confusing that I'm still trying to figure out why. But I eventually realized that I was like very much on a dom thing. Like I was very much a dom, like in the
Okay.
BDSM spectrum thing, and that kind of made everything like kind of click in my head for me. It's that I liked causing these sensations, and it made me realize, oh, I can do this, and I can enjoy causing these sensations, and I can enjoy doing it to these people, and I can do it in a way that doesn't actually cause them harm.
Yes.
And knowing
That's
that,
exactly what I was gonna say.
get into that, it's also kind of what helped me realize, like, oh, and there's also other ways I can make people feel things. It's like why I send you jokes all the time, because I like making people laugh, because I like making
Oh,
people feel.
I was gonna bring that up. I wasn't sure if I'd ever asked you. You write a lot, and you've sent me things you've written, and the
I write
jokes
a
are
lot of
great.
dialogue, yeah.
And so I
I
was
think,
gonna bring that up.
yeah, I think the one that I sent you that it seems like it might have been your favorite was the one that's like, yeah, we didn't have any flowers, so we had to use a substitute for the scene where he was supposed to be snorting cocaine. What was the substitute?
Yes.
Cocaine.
I love that, dude. It actually reminds me. I liked it so much. I actually got that when I was at work, and I was laughing out loud, like in my office, and everyone kind of turned, and I'm like, "Yeah, don't worry about it." Um, but it reminds me of one of my favorite Nick Nolte quotes,
Oh,
and I don't know if you've ever heard it, but
I have never
Nick
heard of the man.
Nick Nolte has had several times where he's, you know, been in the tabloids for, being excessively screwed up on substances, and there was a movie he did called The Good Thief that got all this Oscar buzz, and he was actually nominated for Best Actor for it, where he had kind of come back from a really hard um, cocaine and other drugs binge and gone through, AA and not AA, but had gone through rehab and had come out, and so they were interviewing him. And they said, this character you play in The Good Thief must have been so hard for you after you went through all these struggles with drugs because you play a guy who's addicted to cocaine. So in the scenes where the character is, strung out on cocaine, what did you do to like get into that mindset and not, not have it bring back bad memories? And he goes, so what I did is I just did a little bit of cocaine. And they'd go, excuse me? And he goes, yeah, I'm in control of it now. I'm an adult, so I needed to be on cocaine, so I went and did some cocaine. And he was being completely serious, and they were like, "Okay, we're just gonna put that over here and move on." Yeah, that one is my favorite of many funny things. I liked he hid the safe behind another safe. Was
Right,
pretty
yeah.
damn good
So
too.
for context for the people listening, what I said to Chris was, if I ever make a comedy mystery movie, one of the gags is going to be the villain having a secret wall safe hidden behind a bigger safe.
I love it. It's good
And my
stuff.
only problem with that gag is I can't think of a way for the heroes to figure it out that isn't also just ridiculous.
I mean, the way I pictured it when you said it, even though it's not hidden behind, is that you'd have the villain that would do like what are those egg dolls?
Matryoshka
The
dolls?
nesting dolls. The nesting dolls.
Yeah, Matryoshka
Where
dolls.
yeah, which is just a safe within 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 a safe.
Yeah, like the asshole's Christmas gift where you put a box into a box into a box.
Exactly.
I think that I think my favorite version of that is there was someone who knew their friend wouldn't have time to get them a Christmas gift, so they got themselves a Christmas gift. They wrapped it up, they put a bow on it, they put a card in it, and then they put that into a bigger box, and they wrapped that up, they put a card in it, and they gave that to their friend, and then their friend opened it, they saw that they had this Christmas gift now to give to their friend.
Yes. Yeah, I've seen that. I forget where that. I've definitely seen
I
that.
think it was somewhere on Cartoon Network.
Must have been.
I think it's like when they were trying to play off of the O. Henry thing, which I have such a grudge against O. Henry because my grandma kept trying to make me watch, gave me this big book of O. Henry stories and trying to make me read them.
Oh yeah. People's best efforts sometimes, right?
Mm, I have a list of other jokes that I made. I'm trying to scroll through and find it, which I. One of my favorite jokes is I'm a master of the subtle art of flirting. I wouldn't really call looking into someone's eyes while you put an entire banana in your mouth subtle.
I
No,
think
but
you
it is
sent me that
effective.
one too. It is effective. 60% of the time it works every time.
Yeah, so that can go up there with Oh, right. Uh, also, these two jokes, which I really like. There are ethical applications for this too. I can't think of any, but I'm sure they exist.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Or this is not the first time a crazy woman has charged me with a knife. This is not the first time a crazy woman has shot at me. This is not the first time a crazy woman has attacked me with a rocket launcher. You know what, Jim? I'm starting to think the problem might be me.
I like that.
I think that the closest thing to like a biting one is liking something ironically, unironically is so out of style nowadays.
Yes. Yeah. Hipster inception.
Yeah, I think the first one of these that I wrote that I remember is supposed to be like a mid dialogue scene where this guy is talking to this woman whose son recently came out to her as like either gay or transgender, came out to her as something, and this is how the scene goes: is look, you have to accept that this isn't a phase. This is who your son actually is. You have to accept that's not something you can change. It's not even something for you to accept. It's just you have to make a choice. Is it you are you going to be in his life or not? And it's like going like that, you know. And then so the woman thinks a little bit, and then she says like, and the leather and the shoulder spikes. Okay, that's a phase.
Okay, that's a face. And the leather and the shoulder. Oh, so in that same category, have have you ever seen? I think was it the 40-year-old version or Knocked Up, where Seth Rogen and Paul Rudd are constantly throughout the movie doing the "you know how I know you're gay" thing. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I haven't seen those movies.
All right, so they're Judd Apatow movies, but there's this back and forth where like there's these two guys are like the guy's best friends, and every scene they're in the movie they're like sitting there playing video games, and he keeps punching the guy in the shoulder, and he'll do like I know you're gay, and he'll like say something stupid, I know you're gay, and it's just really childish and stupid. So me and my buddy at work who come up with movie games a lot and change things around had this thing where he goes, all right, take the exact same scene, but it's two guys in like full on gimp gear. And one guy turns up to get the other guy a beer and bends over and he's got assless chaps on. Bends over, gets the beer, comes, sits back down. The other guy's got a zipper over his mouth and unzips it and turns and goes, I know you're gay. End scene.
Oh, shit, speaking of knowing you're gay, have you heard of Kingdom Hearts?
Have I heard of it?
Yeah.
Yes. I have only played the first one, but I played it as if it was a religious experience.
So I've been in Kingdom Hearts since like I was in middle school.
Yeah.
My first entry into it was with 358 over 2 days, and the main
Yep.
character that is Roxas. I'm sorry, I'm going to start throwing a lot of proper nouns at you.
I know them all. This is
Okay,
this is
so
fine. I am learned on Kingdom Hearts.
okay, cool. Then I probably don't have to give you an explanation. But so I was talking to my now ex-girlfriend when Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, and I'd just beaten the game. I was running around my room. I was screaming with joy. I was so happy because I probably shouldn't give Kingdom Hearts 3 spoilers, huh? But but anyways, I was running with joy. I was really happy, and I tried to explain to her like how much it's meant to me, and it came to me like a bolt in my brain. And I explained to Lillian back then. I said to her, Roxas is the reason why I know for a fact that I am not even slightly interested in men, because I like him so much that if there was even a sliver of interest in that direction, there is no chance I wouldn't have a massive crush on him.
Yeah, no, I think especially in the type of things that we are both obviously both into, and people that I get, like kind of like the geek culture kind of a thing. I
Yeah.
think we all have something that you just have that moment where you get into something or into a character so much where you go, yep, this is the point where I know. This is the point where I know that I can accept the fact that I can understand that that is an attractive dude, and and that's about
Yeah.
as far as I've gone.
Oh, so speaking of gaming, and this is kind of veering a little bit into politics, is I was
Yeah,
trying to think of.
and you're welcome to veer into
Yeah.
politics, like I told
Yes.
you. I
Yeah.
I just try to keep the trolls at bay on other podcasts that with people that I have on that
Oh, don't worry. What I'm going
are
to
are
say, the trolls are going to
targets.
hate.
No, I'm fine with that, but I'd rather have them show up because of things that like I intentionally am saying and believe in my guests,
Yeah.
rather than giving them extra fuel on other shows. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. So to go on a little bit of a walk for this one, so I'm interested in being a psychologist
Is
because
that what you're doing in school? I
yeah,
didn't even ask you that. Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Well, hopefully I need to take a gap year. Then I need to, and then grad school is massively debted, so I need to think. It's a long thing.
Uh-huh.
But I want to be a psychologist because I want to be able to give the best help possible to people who need help, who not only need help, but who know they need help and are actively seeking it. And with the way medical school works and the way a lot of doctors honestly work is like there's this tendency that like if they don't have something memorized, they just assume it doesn't exist. Because that's how school works, is they teach you to memorize things, and if you don't have it memorized, it's assumed it's not important. It's just
Right. I
I,
never
I
need to learn anything more than you taught me here. Bye.
yeah, and you're never taught how to learn. You're just taught how to memorize. You're never taught how to do research. It's such a mess. But anyways, and I was trying to explain that to someone, and what I said is like, and the thing that kind of turned me on to that was I was working at a convention. I was volunteering at a convention, and like I kind of made friends with a bunch of people who were like outside of like the gender binary and like who were transgender and who were like of various sexualities. And I kind of had this epiphany, and I realized like I kind of said this as a joke, but it's something I realized that kind of explains the whole dichotomy of gaming as a whole. And it's like you see, when you have a hobby that can be experienced almost entirely in full, entirely on your own, like gaming, you will of course attract a lot of people who have been exiled from society, whether that be for like race or sexuality or gender or any other reason,
Yep.
which is great. But the problem is that you also attract a lot of people who are excluded from society for very good reasons.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and that's kind of my way of describing that.
No, that's a perfect. I was gonna say because the good side of that, um,
Is that there are a lot of people who are excluded from society for
well,
bullshit reasons. The bad side
exactly.
of that is that some people are rightfully excluded.
And I was talking. I went to PAX East, or at least 2 days of it earlier, because a guy on here, my friend Reed D, was went to high school with my wife. I found out, which is really cool. But we had become friends through Twitter, kind of tangentially to that, which is really cool. Um, got me tickets to PAX East. He had extra ones, and he ended up working for TakeThis.org. I don't know if you know of them, but that was
I've seen them around, yeah.
yeah, that was Russ Pitts and Susan Arnett from or Arendt from The Escapist were part of like the people that started it, but they run the like the safe space rooms at conventions,
Yeah,
basically the place. And I
apparently the
think
best editor in the world and also her husband.
yeah, Russ is a character. That's as far as I'll go with that. But anyway, because she's just a sweetheart, and it's awesome that Take This is an awesome thing. But anyway, so Reed was working for them, so he got free passes, so he gave me his passes to go. And the thing, as I was waiting in line to get in, I looked around and I thought back to being, you know, 9, 10, 11 years old, and going to like the little local like hole in the wall comic shops, or pre EB games video game stores that were like dimly lit, back room stuff where you felt like you were being looked down on by people for the stuff that you liked. Where like, oh, if I wanted to go play D&D with my friends, I had to go into some basement of some comic shop somewhere because I didn't want the freaking normies to see me, or whatever. And
I
now I'm
absolutely do
standing
not.
at what?
I absolutely do not know. Like
Right.
EB Games to me is the olden times.
Okay, so
Like
so anyway,
from
so
pre-me.
so then let me learn you. But anyway, this was a thing where like even things that seem so simple. Like my mother told stories about how my brother got into dinosaurs. He got into dinosaurs when he was 4 years old. So this is 1985. There wasn't any Jurassic Park. There was all there were like the 10 million year BC movies and stuff from the 50s and 60s. So there wasn't, a line of dinosaur toys for little kids yet. So she had to kind of go out and find, like, go to like the Museum of Science and like weird, like catalogs and stuff to find dinosaur toys for him. And that's a pretty standard seeming thing that was so hard back then. But to stand to back to the video game thing, to stand in front of a convention center that a week or two prior or a month or two prior I had gone and seen a boat show, which is a completely different kind of geek. It's old white money geek. It's a very different thing. But anyone that has a passion about something I call a geek, I said to my friend the other day
Accurately, yeah.
that was giving me crap, or not giving me crap, but making like a comment about I'll never be able to understand how someone can invest like an entire night of their time into Dungeons and Dragons or into like an RPG video game. And I go, "You play fantasy sports, right?" And they said, "Yeah." And I go, "You play Dungeons and Dragons." And I was about to say, it's the same goddamn thing. Like, just it's a passion, and you're into it, and you analyze it, and that's cool. Go for it, do it. So to stand with all these people and look around and go, it's finally acceptable. It's finally okay. And then you mix in with that I'm just talking about my perspective on it. A part of it that is me, I felt like an outcast, not to leave alone the transgendered people in the crowd that 10 years ago wouldn't have been able to have a thing that they could be out there with everybody else. Just the gay, non-binary, like however you want to put it, that just didn't feel like they had a place to go. And now we're all in the same place together with a common denominator, and we don't have to, hide it. And I think that's wicked cool.
Yeah, and to kind of give you how different that is for me, like, let me put it this way. When I was in high school, in gym class, a fist fight once broke up among the boys over who got to use the pink bike.
Nice.
Not who was stuck with it, who got to use it.
I am really happy to hear that.
And I think that was actually kind of a problem for me because, like, obviously San Francisco, so, like, gay rights especially is, like, it's not that it's not still a problem, because it is, like, still a problem there. There's still a lot of very bigoted people in there, and they're getting more because of the whole tech influx thingy. And yeah, it was a bunch of rich assholes trying to come around and just throw money around. I have opinions on these things.
I have opinions as well.
Yeah, but basically it kind of went so far that, like, it went so far to normalize it for me, to the point that I kind of literally, it kind of looped around to the point where I don't notice, to the point where one of my aunts and her wife were at almost every single family gathering that I went to on my dad's side of the family, and it wasn't until one of them was pregnant. And to be clear, my aunt's wife is like the most butch-looking lesbian you can think of. Like, she even, like, she has like the classic, like, butch, well, then classic butch haircut, like that spiky faux hawk thingy.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And she, like, very much dresses like a joke that I like to make is that lesbians dress like how boys 10 years younger than them dress.
That's a very, very good observation, because I agree.
Yeah, and, like, so she dressed like that, and literally I never noticed until one of them was pregnant that they were. I didn't even notice, not that they weren't lesbians. I didn't notice they were in a relationship. I just assumed they were both sisters of the same guy.
Oh yeah, and that shows how it's like it's not even a big deal. Like it's so not a big deal that you just see straight through it. It's transparent.
Yeah,
It's
and,
just
like, one of my best friends in high school was this girl who, like, dressed like an 8-year-old schoolboy, and she also had the classic lesbian haircut of that time. And again, it wasn't until the last week of school, when she mentioned doing something for a year with her girlfriend, that it even clicked for me in my head. It's like, oh,
oh right, cool.
I totally missed that. Because again, it's like, it's gotten so normal for me that I literally don't notice unless someone points it out.
I think also living in a coastal liberal town, but as my brother likes to joke, the West Coast liberalism is people that wanted to go there because they wanted to go there. Like that's
Eh,
newer. Whereas we've got, the liberalism in that, we're a big city, so it's kind of where the people that work in the types of fields that sway that way have a tendency to go to. But we've got this underbelly, especially in the Southie area of Boston, where Ben Affleck likes to set all of his movies. And the old Irish and old Italian population that's still around here, that there's this really kind of deep-seated cultural conservatism that I wouldn't call it like alt-right. It's definitely not like the Trump type of conservatism.
that's original right.
Yes, but it's still pretty gross and pretty goddamn scary. I remember realizing that my grandfather was incredibly racist when I was like 6 or 7 years old, when he was talking about Kenny Hill, who was a local baseball player from Lynn, but he ended up being on the Indians. And he was a very big player for the Indians. And I was so impressed because my grandfather knew Kenny Hill's family, and Kenny Hill's African American. And I said, "Oh, that's awesome. I would love to meet them." And he says, "Oh yeah, you can meet them sometime. They're really nice for word deleted." And I
Yeah.
went, "Shit." Like in my head, I'm like, "Oh no."
You want to talk about You want to talk about racist grandparents? You want to hear something incredibly confusing?
Sure.
So my family, like I said, my family emigrated from. They were refugees from the Ukraine part of Russia. My paternal grandmother hates Vladimir Putin, like with a burning passion.
Well,
She is
I like this person already.
you're about to not,
I know I was kind
because
of helping you with your setup there.
because she understands all the horrible things Putin has done. She is firmly against him. She gets he's a terrible person. She fucking loves Donald Trump. And I cannot, no matter what I tell her or what she says to me, I cannot understand how that is fucking possible.
Oh
Not just
no.
because of the similarities in their politics, but because it is so obvious to everyone, especially if you're watching Russian news, where they're very open about this being the case, that Donald Trump is in Putin's pocket.
Oh no.
Oh, Jesus.
This
And then my
entire
mother, and
thing.
like, of course, they're all my family, like all of like my paternal grandmother and my mom are super racist against the Chinese, because that's kind of like, if you're going to be racist in Russia, that's who you're racist against, because black
Yeah,
people in
that
Russia, like the black people in Russia mostly got there like from African mercenary groups that kind of were going up and down. So like it's less of like the slave trade in Russia, how black people got there, and more just like they kind of naturally diffused there over time. There's still racism against black people, but it's way lesser than it is like in America. But like there is strong racism in post-Soviet Russia and during the Soviet Union against the Chinese.
wow. I mean, that makes sense, particularly in co-location of land masses and things of that nature, and power struggles and all of that. But man, yeah,
Which
yeah,
again, I grew up in a mostly Chinese neighborhood.
yeah. That's so wild. Um, so yeah, obviously we can do some more, but I just wanted we've been going for quite a bit, so I'd like to do a little bit more and get to a wrap up. And I'm thinking we have enough to talk about that I could definitely have you on again, because this has been a blast,
Oh,
buddy.
totally.
I just
I haven't actually
eventually
talked about my pocket. I haven't actually talked about my politics yet.
No, that's what I was going to say. Let's get into we could get into that a little bit, and then because it's midnight for me, so I just want to make sure I don't go
Christ.
but it's all good. So yeah,
Yeah,
let's jump right in. Let's jump right into that, and I'll preempt by saying that I'm a very open-minded guy, and so I don't hold back what you want to talk about. I am surrounded by people of different viewpoints, and I'm not saying that I fear that ours are different. I just want you to know that I'm perfectly open to a conversation, and
okay.
that's all.
Uh, okay, so for this one especially, if I start to talk over you, please let me know, because
Same here,
that's actually very
please.
important. Uh,
Same here as well.
so obviously, like I said, my family came from the Soviet Union, so I'm very like immediately kind of wary of the whole like putting like the whole socialism, the whole integrating the government more into our lives, consolidating that much power up top, because my parents had to flee from an example of that going horribly wrong.
Yes, the type of government that works great on paper until you put the human condition into it.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so like my view on American politics, whenever I see people talking about stuff like universal health care and stuff like that, is I don't understand why people think the the solution to a problem brought about by the government's failure to properly exercise their power is to give the government even more power.
Yeah, I agree. It's the weirdest thing, and I've always been confused, not necessarily confused, but it always amazes me that the youth of a nation um, are the ones that get stereotypically pushed into thinking this way. Because, yeah, stereotypically that is, but the youth are usually the people with access to the best information. So it amazes me that something that's so, like the way you just explained that right there, right, should be an immediate red flag to people. Like the thing you want to fix, you're going to give yourself more of that.
Yeah, and it's like especially with like let's just use healthcare as an example. From what I can tell in America up until let's say about the 80s, because I'm going to be honest, a lot of I blame a lot of current problems on the Reagan administration. Uh,
Yes. Oh,
on the Reagan
the
administration and on America never really getting past the fact that it lost Vietnam. Like Iraq is basically let's do Vietnam
ah
again but try and win.
yes. It's so good to hear somebody say that because it's so true.
Yeah. Um, which oh Jesus Christ, Vietnam was a joke in Russia because well a joke in like kind of the idea is like the Americans aren't actually going to do something this stupid, are they? Because the Viet Cong, some of the leaders would go and hide on Russian bases, and in order to fully get them, America would have had to be willing to start World War III.
It's a brilliant game of chess right there.
Yeah, so they were doomed from the start, and it was just the
We were
dumbest
we
fucking war in history.
Yeah. Let's send a whole bunch of quickly trained individuals to fight incredibly well trained people on their home turf. Good job,
Yeah,
guys.
and in a war that we literally can't win unless we're willing to start the war, we are desperately trying to avoid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
they
I I've made comments that regardless of trying to avoid World War III, I feel like we've kind of been in World War III since Vietnam, but that's just a completely different issue in and of itself.
yeah. Uh, yeah, but like it's weird that the right wing is like called the conservative movement because like honestly, I feel like what the left wants is at least in terms of like stuff like taxation and medical stuff is and like corporate power is they're the ones that want to go back to the way things were when there was 100% tax rate on people who were making over like $1 million or something,
Yep.
where there was firm rules about what corporations could and couldn't do, and monopolies were more likely to be busted. And especially with healthcare, where there was a rule about how much, like the reason why healthcare in America is such a big mess is because the insurance companies get massive discounts on everything, which means the hospitals have to jack up their prices to be able to
Yep.
cover the cost of medicine. And literally, the government could fix that so much by just saying this is the set limit on how much of a discount insurance companies can get from hospitals, and hospital prices would plummet immediately.
Yep.
Like
But
the
but
problem
that
with the
but
government
that
isn't that it
goes
needs more exercise or more power; it's that it needs to properly use its power, and it's not.
and that goes completely against capitalism, which we seem to be way into as well.
Yeah, well, because here's the thing. Here's the thing is like I am very much a capitalist. I'm super in favor of capitalism because
I agree.
all of the great advances that we've made have been a result of that kind of direct competition. Like the Cold War was so good for America and only America, by the way, because we had that clear
Yes.
enemy that we were putting so much into fighting, and we couldn't fight them with war, so we had to fight them with technology. But like the to me, the government has two purposes. Ultimately, two purposes. The first one is to regulate trade across interstate borders, and the second is to protect its people from exploitation. That is
Yes.
its only two jobs.
I agree with you there.
And the type of capitalism that works is the type of capitalism where the great angry beast that is business has to actively fight with the great angry beast that is government, where laws are set in place that neither one can be happy as long as the other one is happy. And
Yeah.
you just put those two forces against each other, and then everything will start to work out better for the people. Like that's where you get things like government being willing to bust open monopolies and not let things get that far out of hand and regulate like certain deals that can be made. Like, and
Not
again, like I'm not
allow
just
not allow a dipshit that his trust
yeah,
fund
like
lets him take over a medical company, make EpiPens cost $1,000.
Yeah, exactly. And like the whole thing with Donald Trump, like the reason why Donald Trump is such a menace right now is A, because our government isn't working, and B, because we've gone so far beyond how our government was originally supposed to work, because we just kept on giving the president more and more power, that now it's a complete mess. Because
And
our government was never meant to run like that. The president is supposed to be in charge specifically of external affairs. That's why our first president was a military general.
and now you're stuck with a party that's gotten themselves in so deep that they're too afraid to take his power away.
Yeah, and then the Democrats, of course, want to fight against it, but they're getting their money from the same place, and the people they're getting the money from
Uh-huh.
don't care how bad things get.
It's funny that you mentioned that and it's a good point, and I never really fully thought of it, that you're right. It's starting to become like that polar shift where you get a lot of people that like to point fingers nowadays going, the Republicans were really the Democrats back in the day, and it's like if you use conservative and liberal, it's like you're absolutely right. And it seems like that shift is happening again. It's like that pre-Reagan conservatism is what the Democratic Party is actually asking for.
Yeah,
As funny as that
like because
is.
originally what the Democrats and Republicans were is the Democrats were in favor of the government having more power, the Republicans were in favor of the government having less.
Yes.
And when the Republicans started getting out of hand by giving away too much power, specifically not giving more power to the people, but giving power to corporations, the Democrats could not give a good response because their entire core thesis is that they cannot is built around the government having more power.
Yeah.
And you can't fight against the problem built that comes from someone having too much power with saying that there should still be this much power in one hand, it should just be in another hand.
The other thing that completely breaks my brain about the way this country is set up, and I get that most of it comes from a time that was supposed to unify us. It was supposed to give the smaller groups of people just as much of a voice as the bigger groups of people. I get it. But the fact that there's a difference between state and federal laws fucks with my brain, because I get it. Should be a dividing line, but at the same time, when it comes to things like healthcare and separation of church and state, the fact that people are fleeing states so they can get proper medical help for things, like rape and being pregnant or getting sexually transmitted diseases, all these things, that because some church thinks that it's not okay, some whole state passes a law. It's like I think
Exactly. That's what I mean about how the
it,
government should be protecting people from exploitation.
yeah, it's completely ridiculous. And it's when I heard about that, because I wasn't as politically in tune until I got to college and took a politics class. And I got to really give that politics professor a lot of credit, because he was just teaching, a politics 101, elective class. But I got a lot out of it because he said a lot of stuff like that. Like any of this unregulated is a bad thing. He even said one day, he goes, the fact that one state can have stricter gun control laws than another state is terrible, because if you live on the border of the two states, they're just going to be freaking embezzling guns across the land border. Like there's no physical border, so you can't have a law like that. It doesn't work. It's why doing things like that is so hard in Europe, because it's all land borders. There's no ocean separating people. But he drew a thing on the blackboard, and it completely set a lot of it in motion, where he put a dot on the top and he put a dot on the bottom, and he wrote on the right, right, and on the left he wrote left, and he made a circle, and he put names around the right and left that were far separated, like um um you name it, people that are just expected to be the epitome of both. But then he wrote Hitler and Stalin and all these other people like this right at the bottom dot, and he says, you go too far in one direction, guess where you end up. And it was a really cool way, a simple way of thinking about it, because it's like anything unregulated, anything unquestioned, like you said with uh if either one is happy, the other one has to be sad. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah, don't
It's the
put
same
too much
thing.
power anywhere. That's where our entire government is built off of, having those three legs of
Yes.
government, and we've completely fucked
Yes.
it up.
Oh, and the fact that people can just veto it whenever they want now, it just seems like a game nowadays. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to really involve those other two branches today. What?
Yeah. It sucks so hard. Let me show you. Remind me to send you a link to a comic called Law and Sausages. That kind of
Please
is a law
do.
professor kind of going into how this has changed over history. It's very well written. It's drawn by the guy who does Saturday Morning Breakfast cereal because it's him and his brother.
Oh, kick-ass. Oh, that's awesome. I love that stuff.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, like when people talk about how this country, about like how they need to change the constitution or whatever it is, because like this country was made by like a bunch of old stuffy white men who didn't know what they're talking about and stuff like that. I completely agree when it comes to like social issues. Social issues is what needs updating and what needs like
Yes.
to be properly recognized and handled in the government. That all needs updating. But the basic structure of the government, the skeleton of it, that is like one of the best created things like in American politics, period. Like in politics in general, it's one of the most elegantly designed things that has ever been around and that the world has ever seen. And the reason why it's so broken is because we have been deliberately breaking it.
Yes. It's like the idea of we're going to put our system into another nation that needs an improvement. You go, oh, great, on paper, that sounds so good. And then you go, oh, yeah, you brought all your social shit with you. Ah.
Yeah, like, and we can solve the social shit while still putting back together our government.
Right.
Shit, what else was I going to say?
So an interesting point while you were talking about this that I think ties into part of the conversation we were having as a whole. Growing up at the end, I grew up, knowledgeable of the end of the Cold War, right? The Berlin Wall dropping was something that happened in my early life, but I remember it. I remember it being a big deal. I remember them having to change the history books, to change the USSR out of it, and all that. It was a really big deal, and
My
they
dad
went
still
over.
has a Soviet Union still has a Soviet Union passport in his desk.
That's awesome. So it was all there in part of my life, but the carryover of Russia being the big villain for the United States for a long period of time carried over into a lot of media. And so I remember, you've got the Rocky series with, Rocky 4, basically Rocky representing America punching fucking Russia to death is basically the entire idea of that movie.
I
And then
love the Rocky movies so
oh yeah,
much.
and then the Mighty Ducks series, where in every movie the kids are always playing against the all black wearing Russian hockey team, and you sit there and you go, "Oh God, here we go." And I was wondering, I don't
Miracle on
know if
Ice is one of the best movies ever made, for the record.
yes, yes,
Like,
and
I saw a joke going around in 2016, which is like, was America ever great? And the response was, we were great for like 5 minutes after a hockey match in 1980.
100%. And I was wondering if because I look at it as I call it propaganda light. You know what I mean? Because it's not really hurting anybody, but at the same time, it's like, oh man, like I could see like a 6-year-old kid growing up jaded and being like, man, I can't wait till I get on my high school's hockey team so I can play hockey against the Russians, or whatever it is. But was there anything that you were knowledgeable of from the culture you came from, like that maybe one of these movies like this Three Musketeers thing or anything that was like heavily um against America, or heavily like where we're kind of like the jokey dim-witted idiot like villain in it, or something? It would just be funny to me if that existed.
Ooh, I actually did think something, not against America, but against England. In
Oh, okay.
the second episode of the Three Musketeers, which I think is what you're about to watch,
Yep.
Lord Buckingham is in that, and it is very weird in a series that's all about French people. The most aggressive womanizer is an Englishman. But yeah, like I can't think of that much like direct thing with going against America because most of my exposure to like Russian media was like children's books and like children's movies that my grandparents
Yeah.
had. And when I say children's books, I mean like 3 to 5 year old.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, there's Dede Fielder, which is I guess kind of Soviet propaganda because it's like this kid just kind of goes out into the world and he just finds a house and he just lives in the house.
Oh, there you go. Accept
Yeah,
your
and
social status. Have fun.
well, no, because the point is that he's living in this big city to live in the country, but he just finds a massive house and it's like, I live here now.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a very good little fun little kid series because he lives with this dog and this bird and this cat. It's very neat. Uh, but yeah, like I don't know that much like anti-America things from like what
No,
I've read.
maybe they don't exist in that form like they do here. It's interesting to me,
Yeah,
you know,
it might be a bit out of the range.
we lean so heavy on that in like stupid little Disney movies. You know, it's just kind of crazy.
Yeah,
I think we've got a lot more that we could talk about, but I think we
you
should
need
try
to
to
go to
wrap.
sleep, dude.
Yeah, but I was going to ask, stupid, simple podcast questions to end the thing out. Um,
Yep.
One or two, and if there's multiple, go for it. Favorite video games?
Favorite video game. So my favorite video game of all time is The World Ends with You.
Oh, I've never heard of this one.
It's
Again,
this
you're selling
great
me.
DS game made by the person
Ooh.
who made Kingdom Hearts and who made the good Final Fantasy games. Uh,
I like that. That's a good point right there.
yeah, also, I love Final Fantasy V a lot. It's like my favorite Final Fantasy game because. Do you mind if I give you a spoiler for that game?
I've played Final Fantasy V.
Yeah. So Galuf, how he goes out.
Yeah.
It's my favorite game, A, because he dies in the best goddamn way possible with the bad guy just throwing instant death after instant death after instant death after instant death magic at him, and he
Yep.
just keeps standing and he keeps fucking it, fighting this guy. And then at the end of it, when he actually does go down, the heroes actually try to use resurrection magic on him. Like, unlike with Aerith in Final Fantasy VII, how they just didn't show her.
Yeah.
They actually, like, yeah, with Galuf, when he goes down, like, you see the protagonist going, like, they try to use a Phoenix Down on him, they try to cast Raise on him, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But you see them try.
It's rough. It's so rough.
It's one of the best death scenes in all of gaming, but I was so happy when I saw that they actually did that. And yeah, like, also the outfits for that are also cool, because they have the dress system.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, what about movies?
Favorite movies. Well, Buck and Bardi, like I said, is a really
Yeah,
good movie that I
I'm
recommend
gonna
to
look that
everyone.
one up.
I can't find a version of it with subtitles, but as soon as I do, I'm sending that to you. Another movie that I really like. Weirdly enough, G.I. Joe: Rise of Cobra. Oh no,
Yeah,
not G.I. Joe: Rise of Cobra. The second G.I. Joe movie. What was
yeah,
it called?
that was actually a blast.
Yeah.
It
Also,
was.
White House Down. I love White House Down.
Yeah,
And The
yeah,
Penguins of
yeah.
Madagascar.
Nice,
Penguins of
nice.
Madagascar is so fucking funny. It was the
It
first
really
movie I went to
is.
theater to see more than once.
It really is.
Where they think they're in Ireland but they're actually in China, and like they see all the Chinese architecture in them, and then they try mailing themselves to China, and they pop up. It's like, ah yes, China's famous Little Dublin.
And then music, bands, genre, whatever.
Oh Christ!
I
Well, it's
think
the
you and I
MP3
have.
era, so I listen to everything.
Yeah, but like ones that stick out. Go.
Uh, okay, let me just look at my playlist, see what I've been listening to the most recently right now.
Because I think you and I had a back and forth about some band recently. Not Boston, not Slippery When Wet, because we talked about all those.
I think it was it Aerosmith? We didn't talk about
No, I thought it was like Blink 182 or
Offspring and
or
Green
the
Day and stuff like that when you were
Offspring.
looking for things to sleep about, and I was thinking like pop
Yes.
punk stuff. Yeah, I love those.
Yes.
One of my favorite albums is Coldplay has this album that came out in like a couple of years ago called I think A Sky Full of Stars. It's like,
Yep.
have you ever heard Daft Punk's Discovery album?
Yep.
A Sky Full of Stars is kind of like the lighter songs on Discovery, but I think they're kind of better than the light songs on Discovery because I can't get through the light songs on Discovery. But like Chris Martin's vocals actually works really well for that type of music, and it just like it sounds very good. Like
I agree, and Coldplay is a hot and cold band for me, especially a lot of their more recent stuff, and that I really liked that album.
yeah. I recently found a song that I've had 2 seconds of stuck in my head for forever, and I finally found the name called "Let My Love Open the Door" by Pete Townsend.
Yep, that's an amazing song. And you know what? I've known that song for my whole life and never knew it was Pete Townsend.
Yeah, I listened to Warren Zevon's "Excitable Boy" soundtrack recently, "Excitable
Oh,
Boy" album recently, and "Lawyers, Guns,
yes.
and Money." I just always listen to whenever I'm walking because it's just such great clapping music.
Lawyers, Guns, and Money is an
I love
incredible
how you never
song.
find out what actually happened.
Yep.
I listened to Genesis's Invisible Touch album recently, which is also very good. Anything she does is like a song about waifus before waifus were a thing.
Yep.
The Cult's Love album is very good.
Yes.
I heard Copacabana for the first time a couple weeks ago, and I love it.
Copacabana.
Yeah, the song that completely redeems Barry Manilow.
Yep.
What else? I recently listened to all of the David Lee Roth Van Halen albums.
Yeah. Oh, that's a trip.
Yeah, he's a very good singer.
He is.
Uh,
Have you
I
ever
I
heard have you ever
was
heard Van Halen with his vocal with the music removed, just leaving his
right, just David
vocals?
Lee Roth yowling on his own.
It's number one awesome because he's actually a great vocalist, but it sounds out without the music. It sounds like my brother always put it that he's reacting to some sort of small disaster going on in the studio that no one else notices but him because he's like, oh no, like in the middle of the song, like a toilet's overflowing or something, and he's the only one that knows.
Yeah. There's a song that Stevie Nicks did with Tom Petty called "Stop Dragging My Heart Around." That
Yep,
like when I broke up, I listened to a lot because that was very like the way Tom Petty is singing in that song and like kind of my feelings about that song. That sums up my feelings about that relationship really well.
that
You know,
song
it's
is
like
a
you're in a
harsh
relationship and like you
breakup
can,
song.
yeah, and like you can tell the other person in the relationship like really doesn't want to be there anymore, but like you love them too much to just tell them to leave, and it's just like
Yep, and whenever they come back and harmonize together, and it's like you're trying to rekindle it and put it back together in your
it's
brain, but
weird
it's just the
because I think
memories.
yeah, and I think Tom Petty was the only guy on that album who Stevie Nicks wasn't involved with, which makes sense.
Probably, yeah.
But she has his love song with Don Henley, which is I think like probably my second favorite love song called "Leather and Lace."
Yep.
My favorite love song is "Bohemian Like You" because it's just so good.
It dude, I'm incredibly impressed. And I don't mean to sound it just like my dad used to always say by me bringing up all of these same type of songs that I can't believe someone your age and I'm 35 like knew these things. So man, I love that you have access to these and like are like just liking them because it's like you showing me that Three Musketeers movie. It's like, how is it that someone in my place in time right now would ever find that? But the fact that we have access to everything is so awesome, you know?
Yeah. One of my favorite songs of all time is actually it's not called Hard Like Heroic. That's the parody. Bad Touch by Bloodhound Gang,
Yep.
because I think that is one of the I think that is genuinely one of the most romantic songs of all time because I've never heard a song that properly conveys how much fun sex can be. Like
Oh,
not
absolutely.
trying to get someone to sleep with you, just like how much fun sex can be, especially with someone who you know really well.
Yes. Oh no. Have you ever heard that entire album
Is
is
hilarious.
friggin' hilarious. I when I finally heard that because that I was pretty young when Bad Touch first released, and that was like one of those things that's like, oh, it's dirty, your kids shouldn't have it. And I remember hearing that album, and the opening song, "I Hope You Die," is one of the funniest goddamn things because it's just all of these scenarios of like basically telling someone, like just stupid nonchalant, like, oh, die, fucker, but it's like these really complicated scenarios in which he wants them to die, and it's hilarious. But anyway, yeah, it is very late, so I'm going to give you a chance now, Elijah, to plug anything that you would like people to hear about, whether it's something you do or whether it's like a cool show or something that you want or want to talk about.
I wrote a short story that I think I've been bugging you about for a while. So if
Yes,
when you post it,
and I
I
have
could give you a link to that, and maybe people could read that if they want. It's a mystery story. It's a short story I wrote for one of my classes that I'm very proud of, where it's the idea I had going into it is what if Watson just fucking hated Sherlock Holmes and his narration reflected that.
and I like I told you, I haven't finished it, but I'm into it, and that explanation is a great setup for it because it's some good stuff, and I can't wait to make it through it. But yeah, if you want to give me a link, because I'll have this up in a week or two, um, give me a link that I could put with it that people can get to it through. I'd
Uh,
be happy to
would
do
you
that.
rather like a Google Docs link or like a PDF I could send or whatever?
PDF would probably be better, just so I'm not pointing them to your Google Docs because that's it's pretty secure. But I'd rather just have something floating around that I don't want people hacking you. You know what I mean?
Okay, let me see if I can even open Skype on my phone because, like I said, I don't.
Oh, I mean, it does. You don't have to send it right now. But what else? You got anything else?
Um, does it have to be something of mine to plug?
No, no, anything you want. Just something. You have a voice. You'll reach hundreds of people through this
Oh,
podcast. So,
I just sent the PDF.
sweet. Thank you.
Uh, to plug that's not mine. There is this guy on YouTube called Noah Caldwell Gervais who does these great video retrospectives on franchise, and his retrospective on his long form retrospective on the Wolfenstein series, and his long form retrospective on especially the God, what's it called? The video game where the Koreans are invading the U.S.
Yep.
What's it called? It's on the tip of my tongue.
Man.
The one that was written by the guy who wrote the movie where where like Wolverines came from.
Yep.
Red Dawn.
I'm getting there.
Written by the guy who did Red Dawn.
Red Dawn. There you go.
Yeah, it's written by the guy who did Red Dawn. I cannot remember the name of the franchise to save my life. Jesus Christ.
It's a video
Homefront?
game, right? Homefront.
Yeah, Homefront.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, his retrospective of Homefront is one of the most entertaining looks at like how a company can still care about a game that didn't do very well, and like how DLC can kind of make you love a game that really clearly has flaws, but the company just kept on working at it and working at it and working at it and trying to make it better because they genuinely cared.
I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and so that's great. If you have a chance to look it up, it's Noah Caldwell-Gervais. He has a very good speaking voice. He's a very interesting dude, and you should check him out.
Yeah, send me also a direct URL link to his stuff, and I'll put it in the description as well.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to the episode on Homefront.
Awesome. And you got anything else, or are we good to go?
I believe that is everything as far as I can think of.
I'm gonna do my quick little thing. I want to point everybody to get on a serious note for a minute. Recently, thanks. There's the link. A guy who goes by Philadelphia, PA. He's the ghost-faced Billa, as he goes. He runs a thing called Research and Destroy. I've been on his podcast before. It's awesome. He just this past weekend, and we're recording this on the wee hours of April 12th, 2019 for me on the East Coast, and it's still the 11th for you. So I've brought you to the future. He this past weekend lost his mother unexpectedly, and so they have a GoFundMe going. And I'll put that in the comments as well, or in the description, to help for funeral costs. So he's a great guy, and I want to point people to that. To my stuff, if you're listening for the first time, thank you. If you came here because Elijah sent you, thank you, Elijah. That's Leonidas701 on Twitter. For those of you that, like me, didn't know his real name until I saw him contact me on Skype.
Also on fanfiction.net if you're interested in reading my horrible writings.
No, there you go, dude. That's the kind of thing you should pitch. The same name on fanfiction.
Yeah, Leonidas701.
Right,
I have a really bad My Little Pony fanfiction and some pretty good Kingdom Hearts fanfiction.
Oh, I'll read it.
I sent you the Kingdom Hearts fanfics.
Oh yeah, no, dude, I gotta, dude, I just have no time, but I gotta get into it. So you wrote a My Little Pony fanfic. Did you ever see
when I was in sophomore year of high school? Yeah.
Did you ever see the Brony episode of Bob's Burgers?
I don't watch Bob's Burgers. I tried, but it's like The Simpsons for me, where it's like just something about the voice acting. You
should at least look up that episode, because I sent it to my friend Jeremy, who's a he's a self-proclaimed brony, and I sent him this, and he goes, "That is so true and so real and so mean." I was like, "Yeah." There's a line from it that says, "Our children are at a convention with a bunch of middle-aged men that like to dress up like horses. They are literally in the safest place they could possibly be." And I went, "Oh God, no, that's a terrible thing." But anyway, yeah. So back to me. I'm at the Chippa on Twitter. I run this podcast, Shooting the Shit with Chippa, along with the Chipman Brothers Tangent, with my brother Movie Bob, Creating Geeks, a parenting podcast of great responsibility with my wife, and the Talkbuster podcast, which has recently gained me some acclaim with the general manager and assistant manager of the last Blockbuster on the planet in Bend, Oregon. And they're going to be regular guests coming back on the show to keep you guys updated on what's going on out there. So with that, I'd like to thank you, Elijah, Leonidas701, for Shooting the Shit with Chippa, and I would love to have you back sometime.
Awesome.
All right.
And yeah, thank you very much for having me on here. This was a lot of fun, and I'm really glad I kept my mouth shut at the very end part there when you were talking about your friend's tragedy, because it was very hard for me to resist responding to you saying you're coming to me from the future by saying, has your brother finally